I'm sure you all know guacamole. This wonderful stuff from Mexico with lots of avocado, a little bit of olive oil, maybe a bit of garlic, but that's it. Mostly avocado. Guess what's inside this jar that's offered by our famous retailers whose names I won't mention? This is a guacamole dip. Guess how much avocado is inside? 0.3% avocado powder. And the rest is starch and a bit of sugars, actually quite a lot of sugars, artificial flavors, salts, sugars, fats, lots of other stuff. I'm sure this is all very good for a short-term profit-driven shareholder, but not so terribly good for our taste buds. I mean, don't we all want sweet, cheap, and convenient food? But don't we also all want a bit of health in our food? Do we want our food to be grown environmentally responsibly? Do we also want our food to be grown in a fair way, with fair working conditions for all the people who produce it? Of course we want that too. So why is that not happening? Why is it that 60% of all the diseases are still food-related? Why is it that we got 2 billion people with overweight and 1 billion people starving from hunger? Why is it that we are destroying soils at a rate of 30 soccer fields per minute, accumulating to 12 million hectares a year? Why is it that we are losing biodiversity? Why are we destroying our climate, warming up our climate? Do we realize that 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions is food and agriculture related? Why is it that this is happening? Why is it that 1% of the richest people own and earn as much as 99% of the rest of the world combined? Isn't this a little strange? What should we do about it? Should we go to Mars? Or is this an old dream from the 50s? You know, with flying saucers and great romantic stuff going to Mars. I'm sure it's possible. And I'm sure we're going to Mars. But if I imagine, converting all our deserts on this planet seems like a piece of cake compared to going to Mars and cultivating, trying to do some agriculture there. So what can we do? Well, I don't have the answer. But I know it's on this planet and not on some other planet. 25 years ago, a bunch of friends of mine and I decided to quit our jobs and start an organic food company. And together with Einstein, we thought we are not going to solve the problems with the type of thinking that created these problems in the first place. So one thing we were sure about, we can't just start a company, a conventional company that sells organic food. We need to look at these things differently. And obviously we didn't have the answers. We still don't. But one thing we knew, it must be completely transparent, whatever we do, because there's no such thing as sustainability without transparency. So we provided all our products with a little stamp with the face of the grower and a QR code, which you can scan with your smartphone and get the full rundown of who this grower is, what he does, how many hectares, what he grows, and what he does, how many kids he's got, and what sort of secret recipes he has for guacamole, for real guacamole. But the most important thing is you can check what his footprint is on people and planet, what he does for the environment, what he does for biodiversity, for the livelihoods of the people he works with. And we do this by doing an assessment every year. So we skip a whole lot of other assessments. We do one-stop assessment that yields various certificates, organic, fair trade, and many other certificates, which is important because you want to supply a wide range of supermarkets. If you don't, you become too dependent on one supermarket, then, these guys have a tendency, unstoppable tendency, to play this race to the bottom game. Price-wise, race to the bottom at the expense of people and planet. So you don't want that. So you want to spread your interest and sell a little bit here, a little bit there, and apply this old principle, put your trust in God, but keep checking the rest. Or as the Muslims say, put your trust in Allah, but make sure you tie your camel. So for the buyers of these supermarkets, we thought, well, it's important that they can make an informed purchase decision as well. Like we enable growers to share their story, their true story, we want to enable consumers to make an informed purchase decision. But the same applies to the buyers of the retailers. So we literally provide them with a passport, a grower passport, where it's a digital thing where they can click and see all the certificates they want. But they can also see what the performance of that product, that grower is, on people and planet. And then you hear them saying, well, hang on, my friend, organic food is a little expensive, isn't it? Maybe we should talk about price. Is that really the case? Is organic food too expensive, or is conventional food too cheap, as long as we keep externalizing costs of damage to people and planet to future generations, or at best the taxpayer? Is that really true, that organic is too expensive? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we would be able to monetize the impact on people and planet and put a price on it? Well, we do. We managed to team up with a bunch of experts from United Nations agencies to quantify the impact on people and planet. Let's have a closer look at this. Take, for instance, soil. Organic growers contribute to soil fertility. Conventional growers use mineral fertilizer, which is good for the short-term increase of yields per hectare. But it won't last, because after a few years, these soils will be depleted. The water holding capacity will be gone. So yes, on the short term, you can earn a little bit more from that hectare, but after a few years, it's gone. Whilst organic growers, they use crop rotation, organic manures, compost, etc. They build soils. And that has a price that can be monetized and published and compared to the conventional neighbor that farms right adjacent to this organic farmer. So that's what we started doing. The same applies to water. Organic growers don't pollute water with pesticides and chemicals. If you do, that's okay. But then can you please, follow the polluter pays principle and also be held accountable to clean up the mess you created in the water. Same with biodiversity, with the livelihoods of people, with climate. For instance, livelihoods of people. Of course, the organic grower pays a little bit more for his people, looks after fair working conditions, but that costs money. Then it's difficult to compete against somebody who doesn't. He can always be cheaper. So we don't operate in a level playing field. That must change. And it all starts with transparency, also true cost transparency. This is complicated stuff, so this is how we communicate it. Buy organic avocados and save 6 meters of fertile soil, or buy these organic grapes and save 25,000 liters of water, or get these organic pineapples from Costa Rica and get save 400 liters of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, if you accumulate all the cost of the environmental damage that we do with our intensive farming systems, it accumulates to $2.1 trillion US. That's $2,100 billion. That's a lot of zeros. The social cost of our food production is even more, $2.7 trillion US. And to put that in perspective, our total food sales in the world is $7.8 trillion US. So the 4.8 trillion is not factored into this price. So in fact, it's way too cheap. The food we eat is way too cheap. As long as you keep externalizing the costs to the environment and social justice to future generations, food will be too cheap. So what can we do about this? I mean, why did we get there in the first place? There's no consumer who wants this. There's no, because, 10% of our weekly or monthly budget is spent on food. So if you pay a little bit more, nobody will get hurt. Governments want a greener and a fairer planet. And I have never met, not even the most chemical farmer on this planet, I've never met a farmer who would get up in the morning and say, okay, folks, let's get up and kill a few bees. Or let's pollute some groundwater, or whack some greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This farmer doesn't exist. Nobody wants this. Actually, nobody on this planet wants it, and yet it is happening. So what went wrong in our system? Everything has to do with the way we measure success in our economy, particularly in our food economy, but actually it applies to the entire economy. And the way we measure success in our economies is called profit. So maybe we need to revisit this profit definition we have, because our present profit definition allows you to make huge profit over the backs of people and planet. So that needs to be changed. We know all about financial capital, but we need to start including natural capital and the social capital factor, and that's happening. That's the good news. Big corporations, big companies, smaller companies, NGOs, Greenpeace, green fighters, Robin Foods like ourselves, we start investing into more transparency when it comes to holding ourselves accountable against not just financial capital, but also natural capital and social capital. And this is how we do it. This is the old-fashioned economic model. That's your balance sheet or your profit and loss account. But that needs to be compensated for the costs to the environment and what it costs to repair. Even big companies like Unilever, multinational companies, they have an increasing problem with this, because if they don't invest into a greener environment, they will have Greenpeace guys climbing their chimneys, and that's not good for sales or reputation or their marketing or brands. So they are not per se morally forced into this, but economically forced into looking after the environment. And I'm not saying they don't do anything good. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff they do. Maybe not as much as the bad stuff they do, but there is good stuff. And the same applies to social costs. If companies make a profit over the backs of sweatshops in China or poor working conditions in the third world, they should compensate for that in their balance sheet. What would be the purchase price of that product if you would have paid a fair price? Well, we need to compensate that in a social balance sheet. And of course, they also do good things. They do charity, they do a bit of sponsorship, particularly on the Sundays and around Christmas time. That's a popular moment where you do a bit for charity. So on Mondays, you can exploit the shit out of the planet again. No, I haven't said that, sorry. But finally, if you would do this, compensate your financial profit for the ecological cost, social cost, you would end up with the true value of a company, of a profit and loss account. And this needs to be changed. How? By practicing what we preach, by setting up a pilot that we've called the True Cost Pilot in food, farming, and particularly finance. Misha said I'm not allowed to show logos here, so I won't. But there are a nice bunch of food companies, a nice bunch of farmer organizations, and a nice bunch of banks and financial auditors who help us setting up one dashboard to measure the true cost of food, farming, and finance. Because if we don't, particularly finance, because if we don't take away this perverse incentive that is driven by a short-term profit-driven shareholder, we will not succeed with sustainability. We need to descend with this, sustainability into the DNA of our profit definition. And in order to scale this up, we've also teamed up with prestigious United Nations agencies, with employer organizations, and with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. After all, what we want is a true guacamole with a true story at a price that reflects the true cost. Thank you very much.